The most ridiculous mistakes of architects and design engineers. When we're talking about architectural flops and engineering blunders, the first thing that comes to mind is a staircase ending with a wall or a power socket on the ceiling. Believe us, those aren't the most absurd stories. Today we're talking about more blatant mistakes. Glass bridge in Venice. There are many bridges in Venice, but one of them is going down in history as an example of an architectural incompetence. Il Ponte della Costituzione was built from glass and concrete. Even the deck is made of glass. It was primarily designed to link the railway station and the bus station. Everything was made for the convenience of the tourists, but they turned up to be not so happy. About a third of the bridge is stairs, a real nightmare if you're carrying a wheeled suitcase. But the worst thing is when it's snowing, raining, or even if there is a fog, the bridge gets very slippery. To make things even worse, the spans are inclined at a small angle, so even the strongest are struck down. The windy skyscraper. Almost right after the construction of Bridgewater Place in Leeds, the wisecrackers nicknamed the building Dalek, after a monster from Doctor Who. In 2008, it was even awarded as the ugliest building in Europe, but its appearance is only half the problem. Due to the skyscraper's design, the wind on the ground becomes several times stronger. It is so strong that it literally knocks people off their feet. Some pedestrians were harmed, but the authorities came to their senses only after a car was knocked over. The traffic around the building was restricted, and some exits were closed. Enormous railroad cars. The flaws of engineers sometimes are just as amazing. In 2014, it turned out that the French railroad workers spent 15 billion euro to build 2,000 railroad cars that simply wouldn't fit between most of the country's station platforms. To somehow remedy the situation, they had to spend another 70 million to cut the extra 3 centimeters from every car. The case with the 12th Golden Metro line in Mexico turned out to be even more scandalous. After the launch, it worked for a little more than a year before somebody pointed out that the wheelbase of the new cars was too long to make a turn. To prevent a certain catastrophe, several stations were closed. The passengers were offered to cover the closed section on a bus. How much it took to correct the blunder is kept secret, but the mayor of the capital preferred to leave the country. Heavy submarine. The engineers calculate every millimeter of a ship's design. Even a slightest error may result in serious trouble. The design of the Spanish submarine S-80 Plus demonstrated it perfectly. The government and the military had ambitious plans, but when the construction was already in progress, it suddenly turned out that one of the engineers had misplaced a decimal point. That added 75 tons to the ship's weight. The submarine could go on the surface and even submerge, but only once. To turn the ballast worth of 2.2 billion euro into a normal submarine, they decided to make it 7 meters longer. The construction is still in progress. National Park of Falling Buildings. The city of Santos, not far away from Sao Paulo in Brazil, is a real reserve of architectural errors. Almost every high-rise building in the center and on the coast are lopsided. The problem is that the construction there was carried out without consideration of the soil made up of sand and clay. Only houses on piles that reach bedrock could be built here. But in the 60s, nobody cared much about it, and that was done not only in one building, but in the whole city of Santos. As a result, the inclination of those buildings can reach as much as 3 meters, and they can collapse at any moment. The only reaction to that? The accommodation prices went down, not waiting when the buildings follow. Dancing Bridge. We all remember full well the dancing bridge in Volgograd. We'll jump right in. It is not the only dancing bridge in the world. Earlier, a similar history happened in London. The main character here is the pedestrian bridge Millennium that connects the two shores of the Thames and is used mostly by tourists. Right after its opening, its reconstruction began. It was too shaky when people walked on it. After shock absorbers were installed, the shaking was almost gone. However, during strong winds, the bridge is still closed. The forgotten city of tomorrow. Sometimes the architects and designers make mistakes not in the calculation or in foundation, but in the the ideology of the whole project, and we don't know what's worse. In Paris, there are residential blocks that turn out to be almost empty and deserted. For example, Tour Eyot by the architect Émile Eyot. He called it the foretype of the city of tomorrow. A whole residential estate built in 1977, all in one style, no straight angle. Even his contemporaries were skeptical about its appearance, and now those buildings are regularly mentioned in the lists of the ugliest buildings of the world. Mostly elderly live here. Gnomes and hobbits were reluctant to relocate here. Today, it is a very quiet neighborhood where cars or people can rarely be seen.